pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands. One nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all, justice for all. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands. One nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all, justice for all, justice for all, justice for all. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, of the United States of America, of the United States of America. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands. One nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all, justice for all. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands. One nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all, justice for all, justice for all, justice for all. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, of the United States of America, of the United States of America.
When I think about America, I think of so many things. It's my country, the United States, and it means so much to me. Green, green forests, having nice schools, voting for the president, red, white, and blue. Playing in my neighborhood, believing in dreams. Oh, this is America to me. Celebrating holidays, pledge to our flag, can. All different colors, being what you wanna be. Whoa, this is America to me. Whoa, this is America, the land that I love, my country, the United States, under one shining sun. So many different people, together proud and free. This is America, America to me. All kinds of ice cream, animals on farms, pilgrims at Thanksgiving, boats, trains, and cars, helping each other, people I love. Whoa, this is America to me. Whoa, this is America, land that I love, my country, the United States, under one shining sun. So many different people, together proud and free. This is America, America to me. This is America, land that I love, my country, the United States, under one shining sun. So many different people, together proud and free. Oh, this is America, America to me. This is America, America to me.
Good morning. Will you all please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good morning, Lakers. Welcome and thank you for coming to our annual Veterans Day program. This program has become a signature event for our school. We're exceptionally proud to do this for our veterans every single year. We are patriots here at Windermere Prep. It's by no accident that our colors are red, white, and blue. I am pleased today to welcome Headmaster Emeritus Tom Marcy to be our guest speaker. As our former headmaster, many of you know Tom is a great patriot. He values patriotism. He's been all in for this program in his entire tenure at our school, so please give Tom a warm welcome. And before we commence with the program this morning, I would ask that everyone indulge me with a quick story, which is a remembrance of a man named Butch Larson. Butch Larson was my grandmother's brother. I'm going to have to get all the lineage correct, which means that he was my dad's uncle. Butch was born and raised in a town called Rock Rapids, Iowa. Rock Rapids, Iowa, if you don't know where that is, I don't blame you. There's probably more people in this gym than there are in Rock Rapids, Iowa. It's very close to Laverne, Minnesota, which is where you would go for dinner if you lived in Rock Rapids, Iowa. As a child in the 70s, my family would visit my grandmother in Rock Rapids each summer, and my brother and I were the only children in the family at the time. And so what would often happen is we would be thrown in this room off to the side and be given toys. And we would play, but we would quickly get bored with those toys, and we would begin to explore the room and the various drawers and cupboards and so on. And one summer I discovered a drawer. I was probably 8 years old. And that drawer was full of ribbons, patches, and other military paraphernalia. I wasn't smart enough or mature enough to know what exactly they were, but I did know that they were military. Each summer, I would go back to that drawer and I would imagine whose they were or what they were for or what they were about. I was really curious and I couldn't leave it alone. And what happened, and I'm not exceptionally proud of this, but please remember I was a child, I took one of the patches, okay? So this patch came into my possession. Furtively, I shoved it in my pocket one summer, and I've had it ever since. And I've always wondered, what is this patch? What is this about? And I later learned that all of the items in that drawer belonged to my Uncle Butch. We were a small family, so I know it was Dad's uncle, but I called him Uncle Butch as well. Butch and the family never talked about his service, ever. I never heard a story from anyone about what he did or where he went. And it wasn't until years later, trying to find out what this patch was about, personal research, and finally pulling a few stories from my dad, that I came to understand what these things were. This patch is from the 34th Red Bull Infantry Division, World War II. In 1939, Uncle Butch joined what was then a National Guard unit, the Red Bull Infantry, which was comprised of young men from Iowa, Wisconsin, and Minnesota. And all was well and good for a teenage Butch Larson until Pearl Harbor was attacked. And shortly after the attack on Pearl Harbor, this division was quickly transformed, federalized, I think is the word that they call it, from a National Guard unit to a full Army infantry division. On the 8th of January, 1942, this was one of the very first divisions to deploy overseas to join the fight in Europe. As I learned about these things, I came to imagine, and I have no way of knowing if this is true, but I believe this patch was on that journey. Traveled with the troop ship with my Uncle Butch, and they first arrived in Ireland, where they trained, and ultimately they saw their first combat in Algeria as part of Operation Torch, which was one of the first campaigns that brought U.S. troops into World War II. The story is long, but a few highlights to share. In April of 1943, the 34th Red Bull Division captured Hill 609. And for students of military history, you will know that this was one of the most important battles in the African campaign. They defeated the Africa Corps, took Hill 609, and that was the beginning of the end for the Nazis in North Africa. The Red Bull Division skipped the invasion of Sicily. They were rehabilitated, but on September 9th, 1943, the 34th participated in landings at Salerno and joined the Italian campaign with General Patton. The 34th fought with distinction at the Battle of Monte Cassino, which is famous for being very difficult, and although they did not meet their objective and suffered 80% casualties in their infantry battalions, they were known for being very effective and nearly meeting their objective in that battle. In March 1944, a rehabilitated and rested 34th Infantry Division landed at the Anzio beachhead and further in the campaign ultimately liberated the city of Bologna. In World War II, the 34th Red Bull Infantry Division amassed 517 days of frontline combat. I have two regrets about knowing Butch. Butch has been gone for a long time. And the first regret is that I never heard his story personally. I do know that he was with the division for that entire campaign. I do know that he was an Army medic, but that's all I really know. And perhaps he wouldn't have wanted to tell his story, but I wish I would have asked. And the second regret is that I never personally thanked him, even though I thought enough to steal the patch, and I was curious enough to know about what happened with him on this great epic journey that he went on. I never personally thanked him. And so I share all of this with everyone here today as a way of saying thank you to Butch and a way of saying thank you to the veterans here and the veterans across our country. My lesson or my urging for all of the young people in this room is if you have a veteran in your family, don't land with the same sort of regrets that I'm sharing with you today. Ask about the stories and learn, because Butch isn't here to tell his story, and many World War II veterans are no longer with us to tell their story. We have to remember. So ask your family members about their story. And secondly, if there's a veteran in your family, please be sure to thank them for their service. Butch left home in 1942, and he didn't come back until 1945. Like all of our veterans, he put his life on hold so others wouldn't have to. And I say thank you to all of the veterans in this room today.
Good morning, everyone. It's a great privilege and a tremendous honor for me to be standing here before you all once again in this warm and special place that I love so very much. I'm glad to be back home. Dr. Ling, I thank you for your kind invitation to be with you to celebrate Veterans Day today. To all of our students and faculty members, staff, parents, and trustees, it's a thrill to see all of you again. And very importantly, to all of our military service veterans in attendance, I'm so pleased that you have chosen to attend our Veterans Day celebration, as it is an annual signature event of Windermere Preparatory School. In anticipation of my return to WPS in a formal program role today, I have literally counted down the days from when Dr. Ling invited me to speak. And as the days passed, I could not escape wondering how the anticipation of a return to the United States, a return back home, back to one's families and friends from a long, arduous deployment, must feel like to a veteran. I suspect it must be something akin to excitement and emotion on steroids. Homecomings are special events in the lives of all of us, but not all homecomings are alike. Over the course of our history, some homecomings were times of great national excitement and enthusiastic and overt expressions of patriotic pride. One such time was at the end of World War I, thought by many to be the war to end all wars, when Johnny came marching home from over there, victorious from the trench warfare and from the chlorine, phosgene, and mustard gases that were introduced into the battlefields of Europe. At the conclusion of World War II in 1945, G.I. Joes by the thousands returned home as heroes to great fanfare, huge patriotic celebrations and parades, and to the relief and embrace of the American public following the defeats of Nazi Germany and the Empire of Japan. By comparison, the troops who returned from the Korean Peninsula after fighting there from June 1950 to July of 1953, sometimes in bitter cold, in what's often referred to as the Forgotten War, experienced something much less in the way of their homecoming from an American public that was largely disinterested in that war. Those who fought bravely in the steamy jungles of Vietnam also experienced a relatively cold-shoulder return to a nation which had been torn apart by debate and protests over the war. There were no big victory parades or welcome home rallies. Instead, most Vietnam veterans returned to a society that did not seem to care very much about them, or that seemed to view them sometimes with distrust or even anger. Today's troops, who comprise our all-volunteer armed forces, typically have returned from places like Iraq and Afghanistan to relatively little fanfare. Many are dealing with the results of serious injuries, including lost limbs, traumatic brain injury, and post-traumatic stress syndrome. Equally sad in these times is the fact that we are very much in a tenuous, house-divided period of our history, in which patriotic pride seems to be less apparent and is generally less jubilantly expressed by we the people than it has been in other times of our history, except, of course, on special occasions like today, or on Memorial Day, or on the 4th of July. We should never forget that our liberty has come with a price that was paid in blood during the American Revolution. And since that time, it has been maintained by the great courage and tremendous sacrifices of patriotic Americans in service to their country, whenever and wherever they were called upon to deploy. So let's take a few minutes to consider what our veterans really mean to this nation as we know it. From a simple piece entitled Ode to a Veteran, consider the following. It is the veteran, not the preacher, who has protected our freedom of religion. It is the veteran, not the reporter, who has ensured us freedom of the press. It is the veteran, not the poet, who has preserved our freedom of speech. It's the veteran, not the campus organizer, who has maintained our freedom to assemble. It's the veteran, not the lawyer, who has defended our right to a fair trial. It's the veteran, not the politician, who has safeguarded our right to vote. And it is the veteran who salutes the flag, who serves under the flag, who has preserved the American dream. We can never thank our veterans enough for their valor, for their sacrifices, and for their love of and devotion to their country. The greatest generation, as some of you know, is a term that's been used by NBC News anchor, former news anchor, and author Tom Brokaw, to describe those Americans who grew up in the Great Depression, which began in 1929, and who later served and fought in the Army, in the United States Army Air Forces, in the Navy, in the Coast Guard, and in the United States Marine Corps during World War II, as well as those whose labor helped to win the war. In preparing for today's celebration, I came upon a poem worth reading that is particularly applicable to the greatest generation of Americans, whose ranks get smaller with the passing of each day. I want to share it with you. It goes like this. He was getting old and paunchy, and his hair was falling fast. And he sat around the Legion, telling stories of the past, of a war that he once fought in, and the deeds that he had done, and his exploits with his buddies. They were heroes, every one. And though sometimes to his neighbors, his tales became a joke, all his buddies listened quietly, for they knew of where he spoke. But we'll hear his tales no longer, for old Joe has passed away. And the world's a little poorer, for a veteran died today. He won't be mourned by many, just his children and his wife, for he lived an ordinary, very quiet sort of life. He held a job and raised a family, going quietly on his way, and the world won't note his passing, though a veteran died today. When politicians leave this earth, their bodies sometimes lie in state, while thousands note their passing and proclaim that they were great. Papers tell of their life stories from the time that they were young, but the passing of a veteran may go unnoticed and unsung. Is the greatest contribution to the welfare of our land someone who breaks promises and cons his fellow man, or the ordinary fellow who in times of war and strife goes off to serve his country and even offer up his life? The politicians' stipends and the style in which they live are so often disproportionate to the service that they give, while the ordinary veteran who offered up his all is simply paid off with a medal and perhaps a pension small. It's not the politicians with their compromised employees who preserve for us the freedom that now all of us enjoy. Should you find yourself in danger, with your enemies at hand, would you really want some cop-out with a never-waffling stand, or would you want a veteran to be your closest friend? just a common veteran who would fight until the end. He was just a common veteran. Now his ranks are getting thin. But his presence should remind us we may need his likes again. For when countries are in conflict, we find the veteran's part is to clean up all the troubles that the politicians start. If we cannot do him honor while he's here to hear the praise, then at least let's give him homage at the ending of his days. Perhaps just a simple headline in the paper that might say, "Our country is in mourning, for a veteran died today." If you have a surviving member or know of a member of the greatest generation, I want to encourage you today to call or visit or write to that veteran and express your thanks for his or her service. And if you have a family member who's a veteran, or whenever you see someone in the uniform of our armed forces, simply let him or her know you care and very sincerely appreciate his or her service to our country. I believe we have a formidable challenge in our times. Since the founding of our republic and all throughout our history, countless men and women, Americans, veterans, as well as military personnel on active or reserve duty today, have volunteered or accepted our nation's call to service to, if need be, fight for the preservation of our freedom, for our ideals and our values, and for the incredible nation in which we live, under the stars and stripes of red, white, and blue. It is my very humble opinion that we have some real work to do in terms of rebuilding and exhibiting a torchlight, burning spirit of patriotism in today's often perplexing and troubling times. Many historians today agree that patriotism is defined by our values. Broadly speaking, among them are love of and respect for country, honesty, goodness, sacrifice, kindness, peacefulness, etc. It's important to understand that being patriotic does not mean that one believes our country is perfect in every respect. As the framers of the Constitution of the United States of America declared, their goal was to form a more perfect union. That evolution must continue in the present. In street interviews, which are frequently seen on TV, particularly those interviews with millennials and members of Gen Z, many seem to have only the vaguest, if any, real understanding of the Constitution of the United States and the Bill of Rights that specify and guarantee an array of freedoms that we exercise every day and often simply take for granted. Those historic documents also define protections from an overreaching government. From the responses of many young people interviewed, it's evident that in substantial numbers, they are woefully ignorant regarding the tenets of liberty, the functioning of the governmental structure of our nation, and the history of our country. As I've thought about that reality, I've personally concluded that across this land, we need to do a much better job with respect to teaching American history, civics, economics, and political science, and become more deliberately engaged in the nurturing of patriotism. I am extremely proud of a couple of our recent WPS graduates who were accepted to schools specifically for the purpose of preparing them for career leadership roles amongst the ranks of American military and national security personnel. Hank Allen, a member of the WPS class of 2017, is a junior at Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University, studying Homeland Security as a major with a double minor in International Relations and Terrorism Studies. Upon graduation from WPS, he was chosen by the ranking lieutenant colonel as one of 10 students to receive a full 4-year Army ROTC scholarship to Embry-Riddle valued at $286,000, which fully funds his entire college tuition, room, and board. He is a Master Sergeant in the Eagle Battalion of the Army ROTC program at ERAU. Hank has earned a spot via competitive training for the 2nd year in a row on the Ranger Challenge team. This year, he is one of 11 members of Top Team 1, selected from 66 candidates in tryouts to represent Embry-Riddle University. Last year, the Eagle Battalion team competed in the International Sandhurst competition at the United States Military Academy at West Point, advancing from winning the regional competition. Hank was chosen to attend the Air Assault School at Fort Benning in Georgia this past June. He was the sole recipient this past May of the Battalion Military Order of the Purple Heart Leadership Award. He's also received the Platinum PT Athlete Medal Award, the Battalion Challenge Coin, the 6th Brigade Challenge Coin, and the Battalion GPA Award. Hank, what a great job you are doing in representing Windermere Preparatory School at the next level, and what a resume of accomplishment you are writing for yourself. I can imagine a scenario someday when you return to WPS as General Allen to give the Veterans Day address. Hank, please stand and be recognized. The class of 2019 produced our school's first ever graduate congressional appointment to a United States Military Academy. Grace Bennett was a great student and a terrific softball player at WPS. She was inspired to pursue a service academy appointment and a military career by Jeff Wilcox, a veteran, a former Republican U.S. Senate candidate, and our 2015 WPS Veterans Day speaker. She also received great encouragement from former WPS assistant football coach and head softball coach J.D. Wood, who served as an Army Ranger and who is a 2-time WPS Veterans Day speaker. She received an acceptance to the United States Air Force Academy Prep School as a pathway into the Air Force Academy. She also received a congressional appointment to the United States Military Academy. She selected the United States Military Academy at West Point and hopes one day to become a pilot. Grace is seen in this photo taken earlier this year with her squad during BEAST, that's B-E-A-S-T, which is military speak for the physical and mental rigors of cadet basic training, which all plebe cadets undergo before the start of classes at West Point. All cadets at the Academy are required to participate in a Division I sport, in a club sport, or in intramurals. In September tryouts for the handball team, Grace sustained a serious ACL tear and 2 meniscus tears in her knee when a doubles player tripped and crashed into her legs. Her injuries necessitated a major surgery. And though she is now on medical leave from West Point for recuperation purposes, she is doggedly determined to return to the Academy next May to start her enrollment with the cadet class of 2023 and pursue her military service goals. I invited Grace and her mother to be with us today, and I'm pleased that they have been able to join us this morning. Grace, you were truly a groundbreaking student at Windermere Preparatory School. I wish you a full and speedy recovery. Please stand and be welcomed back to your alma mater. Thank you. When you consider the accomplishments of both of these Lakers, each of whom sat right out here where you all are sitting right now just a very short time ago, you might be thinking, wow. Or you might be thinking, I don't believe that a military career is what I want to pursue. And that's absolutely fine. But it is important for all of us to think about how we can demonstrate a greater love for our country and for our fellow citizens each and every day. I urge you to challenge yourself to evidence appreciation for, among many other things, the following: your freedom to worship as you see fit, your freedom to responsibly say what you think, both through spoken and written word, your freedom of movement, the right to freely travel in our country and abroad, your freedom to access information without abundant censorship, your freedom to be politically active and engage peacefully in the change process for a better society. A republic like the United States of America demands a well-informed, well-educated citizenry. So I urge you to take advantage of everything that WPS has to offer you each and every day. Appreciate your freedom to get an education that will help to successfully take you in any direction that you want to pursue with your life. Grasp the significance and the personal benefits of your freedom to pursue entrepreneurship in a capitalist economy wherein there are no fixed limits on what you can achieve. Cherish your freedom not to live in constant fear. And recognize how very fortunate you are to exercise your freedom to pursue and achieve your personal version of the American dream. Further, I want to encourage you to be a person who is respectful toward the symbols of our nation, one who is kind and considerate to others, one who is respectful and civil in all forms of discourse, including the use of social media platforms. I want you to be open-minded and analytical, respectful toward persons who may hold views and opinions contrary to your own, helpful to those who are less fortunate than you, loving toward your parents, your family, your friends, and acquaintances, and lastly, appreciative of the fact that you are not the center of the universe. Always demonstrate appropriate personal humility. Let me close with a couple of final thoughts. In my personal exercise of freedom of religion, I've always considered the following passages of Scripture to be sources of inspirational guidance. I'm sharing them with you today as I believe that their words are descriptive of the personal commitment demonstrated by U.S. veterans throughout the history of our republic. First, from the 13th chapter and the 13th verse of the book of 1 Corinthians are these words: "And now abide faith, hope, love. These three, but the greatest of these is love." And from the 15th chapter of the book of John, verse 13, these words: "Greater love hath no man than he would lay down his life for his friends." We all need to understand and appreciate the facts that those who give military service typically really love their country and their fellow man. Everyone who enters into any branch of our armed forces and military service to the United States of America today either takes the oath of enlistment or the oath of office. In so doing, each one voluntarily commits himself or herself to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, to bear true faith and allegiance to the same, and to obey the orders of the President of the United States and the orders of the officers appointed over him or her. Again, understand, they make these commitments voluntarily, without coercion of any kind, knowing that they may be called upon to make the ultimate sacrifice of their lives for their fellow citizens and for the country which they have pledged themselves to serve. What a commitment that is. If we really do appreciate the many freedoms that we regularly enjoy as Americans, and if we want to, in a meaningful way, thank a veteran, to a person, each one of us here ought to, on a daily basis going forward, embrace the challenge to be the kind of American who is truly worthy of the willingness of our service members to fight for and to die for, if necessary. Some people dream the dream. Some people live the dream. Some people defend the dream. God bless the defenders. To all of you terrific veterans in attendance today, please know that we appreciate your selfless service, which was rendered out of a great love for your country. We thank you for your courage, for the personal sacrifices that you've made, and for your personal contributions, which have helped to keep the United States of America the land of the free. Your demonstrated patriotism is a wonderful example to all of us. May God bless and keep you always. Thank you.
Perhaps you've heard this sentiment. This nation will remain the land of the free only so long as it is the home of the brave. These words are of utmost importance, especially on Veterans Day, because you, our veterans, are the brave of this country. As the middle school student government president, and on behalf of the middle school student body, it was an honor to pin the veterans in attendance this morning. We know that we will never be able to fully understand what you have experienced and sacrificed. So we are here today to honor you. My grandfather served as many as you have. During his time being deployed, he wrote letters to my mom's family. I would like to read one of those letters to you now. Well, here I am. I am really mixed up. They seem to want to keep me here. I don't know when I'll be home. I feel deep down that I should stay, but then again, for my own sake, I want to go home so bad that I can't sleep at night. I guess they want to keep me because I have some intelligence, and that they do have a personnel shortage. And I guess I may mean something to the guys coming in if I'm here. I've waited so long to write because I hoped that I could tell you when I'm coming home. Folks, I couldn't want to come home any more than I do right now. We're in a war over here, but that doesn't mean much difference to me. Right now, I want to be home. So, veterans, we are glad you are home. Thank you for your courage, your bravery, and your dedication to our country. We are humbled. To further honor our veterans, we recognize each branch of service as our Little Laker voices sing the Armed Medley Laker song, and the middle school flag troop presents your colors. As each branch is presented, we request that veterans stand so that we may honor you.
Ladies and gentlemen, please stand for the flag. Yeah, whenever you guys are ready, go ahead and take them out. To all of our veterans, we say a heartfelt and sincere thank you. The stories matter. And so given that, I once more urge all of the young people in the room to ask the family members that they have that are veterans about their story and their service. Don't let the stories go away. This concludes our program. We will have a short reception at the Laker Cafe for all of our veterans and honored guests. Thank you for coming.